So a little new format. I hope you guys like that. I kind of like this format a little bit. This is the third meeting now. We've been talking about supportive leadership. We haven't really necessarily said why it's so important. Well, supportive leadership, here's one of the things that I run into a lot. And a lot of senior leaders and just leaders in general sometimes look down or discourage some types of leadership training that focus on style or leadership theory, because they've tried different styles and different leadership theories and they failed. Things didn't change, things didn't get better. And what they were missing, and that's why we focus differently in our meetings, what they're missing is that they're not, the training they went to didn't focus on the leader themselves. That's why we talk about leadership maturity. That's why we talk about better communication skills. It's why we're going to talk about power, leadership power tonight, sources of power, and using that power to inspire people. Because I take what's called a horizontal look at leadership and leadership skills and being an effective leader. Because when you learn skills that are horizontal, they're effective in every type of leadership theory. And that's what's important. And so that's why we do what we do, and why we do it the way that we do it is that when you gain these skills, not only can you apply them in your personal life and of course at work, but no matter what leadership style you're currently using, things will improve. And that gives you the opportunity then to study other aspects of different leadership theories and begin to apply them. And so that's why these three initial series are so important, is because we're getting horizontal skills that work with any type of vertical leadership style. And so these 3 points are what we're going to talk about tonight. Again, leadership power, sources of power, and power to inspire. All right, terrific. And I just wanted to remind everybody that the meeting is being recorded, so that if you would like a copy, you most certainly can have it. Now, we've seen this slide all 3 times, but repetition is one of the ways that we learn. Leaders are like plutonium. We radiate energy. We're either going to empower an organization or we're going to blow it up. And that's why we're going to talk about power today. So understanding leadership power is absolutely critical. First off, it's critical because it can ensure organizational effectiveness. It is important to retaining and attracting top performers. It helps us motivate people. And bottom line is it good for our self-preservation? So if you think about that, if we're not an effective leader, then we may not be in that leadership role as long as we would like. So there is an aspect of self-preservation in some of the things that we're learning and becoming a good leader. All right. This is a key thought that I'd like for us to think and just take and pause on it. And I'm actually going to ask for a little feedback on this. If you I've mentioned it, but I don't know if it really has sunk in. This is that every conversation has an afterlife. Every conversation has an afterlife. Are your words creating hope, or are they creating hopelessness? So take a look at the 2 pictures. So as a leader, and when people come into your presence and leave your presence, which picture describes how people feel when they leave your presence? Or think of a time when you felt like the hand reaching up out of the water, just somebody please pull me up, after you had a meeting with your boss, or a good meeting that you had and you walked out just yeah, I can do this, and I feel great. And I actually I'm gonna stop that share real quick and flip over, and whether you're on camera or not, tell a time, and please don't tell one about your current boss, as you never know who might actually view the video. Um, but think about a time when you left feeling hopeless or energized from a meeting with your boss. Cynthia.
I can definitely share. I had a conversation that came to mind. Like I was at a place where I felt like I really kept trying to get noticed that I was like doing a good job. And I actually ended up, this was 2013, I actually ended up winning. I was Environmental Professional of the Year for the Tampa Bay Association of Environmental Professionals. And I was talking to the office manager about it, and like I had, I contacted the marketing people and told them about it. There's a thing about it in the company newsletter and all of this stuff. And I was telling him about it, and he was like, "Oh, well, you should put that in the newsletter or something, And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I kind of felt like I wasn't getting. I'm like, I've been trying to tell people that I'm doing really awesome things, like, and it definitely kind of took the wind out of my sails after, being recognized in like the whole area as somebody that was doing something awesome. And then I was kind of getting nowhere. And it kind of made me feel a little deflated.
No, it's actually a perfect story. So keep that in your back pocket, because towards the end, we're going to talk about things that motivate and demotivate high performers, and why high performers choose to leave companies and or stay. And that's going to be one of the things we're going to discuss. Mr. Bendis, Bonnie, Lori, anybody else have a story that they want to share real quick?
I'll go ahead and share. So the last session, it was really interesting to me talking about the levels of maturity and then relating it to this, because when I think about some supervisors or managers I've had in the past, the more immature ones are the ones that you have the conversations with where you walk away deflated. And then when you get somebody on a higher maturity level in terms of leadership, those are the ones you walk away feeling like they believe in me, I can go forward, I can do this. And it's really very interesting that you can see that correlation between the two leadership maturity levels. So I've obviously encountered both in the past, and in the, I just find that now it's I have more, I'm dealing with some more mature leaders that are really, being very supportive and very optimistic, and, really helping to support staff and making it a goal to do that. So
now that I'm glad you mentioned that maturity framework, because as we go through tonight, you're also going to see a correlation between those levels of maturity and the type of power that they use. And you'll see what you've experienced in life is not necessarily due to the leadership style or theory that they practice, but it's 100% on their levels of maturity and how they use the skills that we've been discussing. Phenomenal. Thank you. I'll send you a check, both of you guys, in the mail. So let's flip back real quick to the PowerPoint. And we're going to talk a little bit about power sources. Now, there are positive sources of power. And Larry, this is just something that you were just, kind of mentioning, and Cynthia, certainly what you've experienced in different situations. There's what's called referential power. There's reward power. There's influential power. And then there's team-centered power, okay? So these are different types of positive power sources. Referential is just, they're all just like they sound. You know, if I have a reputation of being an effective leader and someone that you should listen to, you know, that's referential power. It's a positive thing. Reward power is a leader's ability to reward someone for their performance, and that's not always monetary. And matter of fact, the younger generations look for things outside of money in that reward category. Influence, again, influence kind of comes with the level of leadership that you're typically at, how many people that you might have underneath yourself or working in an organization, or at what level you're in, and you can gain great influence. It's very close to persuasive power, where you have the ability to influence people with your charisma and with the way that you approach people and language and talk. And then, of course, team-centered power. Unlocking team power is critical in any organization today, especially if you have millennials and Zoomers. We're going to call Gen Z Zoomers now, because that is their natural work environment, and they're very collaborative. Now, in addition to positive sources of power, there's also neutral sources of power. Neutral sources of power can be used good or bad. In themselves, they're neither positive or negative, but there's formal. Formal power is simply, hey, I'm in this role. I'm a director, I'm a vice president, I'm a manager, whatever that role title is, and therefore I have been given authority by the company. That's formal. That's also legitimate authority. You know, this is the person who, if you're in sales, or if you're trying to get a grant or whatever that might be, this is the person or people who can put the stamp on it and award that contract or grant or whatever it might be, or maybe even approve a promotion. That's that person. Now, an informal leader is someone that's in an organization who people just go to naturally. They exhibit leadership qualities within the team, and people just naturally follow them. And I say naturally, and that simply means they're not formally in charge, but they're what we would call an emergent leader. These are the ones that when we're doing leadership training in a corporate environment or a small business environment, we teach leaders or business owners, these are the people on your staff that you want to look for, because people are already going to them for information, for advice, asking them what to do. And we actually just had a friend, she moved up to North Carolina, and she took a job here recently, the last few months, and she immediately stood out heads and shoulders above the rest of the people in the office. And within 2 months, she got promoted to be the lead in her office. And she is now the lead manager of our director in that office. And that is because her leaders recognized immediately that she was the emergent. And she gained informal power first. And it was very easy just to promote her into leadership, because it was a natural progression of what was already taking place. It's what you might call organic growth within the office. There's also one called expert power. Expert power, if you remember, this correlates with that level of maturity on the leadership maturity framework of being an expert. People gain power by becoming an expert on a subject. And that is incredibly true in the sciences as well as the IT world. When you become an expert, you gain notoriety and power. People listen to you. And then finally, neutral powers are typically organization centered. These are the ones that are just, as the picture kind of shows, they just keep the machine running. This is the power that just every day goes on behind the scenes. It's just there, and it's inherent in any kind of a organization or anything with moving parts that has to keep going. Now, the third source are just like the picture. Negative source powers. I wish I actually had a lightsaber. My grandson's here. He took my lightsaber. I was gonna, you know. But at any rate, gosh, dog. Negative powers. That's exactly what they are. Think of Darth Vader. You know, right? You know, when he chokes people out with the hand, lifts them up. Coercive power or coercive power is exactly what it sounds like. It is coercing people through threat, through anger, through yelling, you name it. I've worked, unfortunately, for several of these type of people. When they don't get what they want, they scream, yell, throw tantrums. They throw blame on other people when they fail. They're very coercive. We know what this is like. This is also kind of falls into Machiavellian type people, people that they think it's better to be feared than loved. Unfortunately, you know that 1500-year-old theory has been debunked for about 1400 years. But at any rate, some people still believe in it. It also authoritarian. You know, I said it, so you do it. Don't ask questions. That's negative. And all of the negative source powers are me centered. And if you think about it, remember those leadership maturity frameworks, the lower or earlier, excuse me, the earlier level of leadership maturity levels were all me centered. They were all self-centered. And so, Lori, once again, I mean, it was a perfect segue what you shared, and how the level of maturity and how mature the leader is. And leadership maturity has nothing to do with age, nothing. You can have a mature high school leader that's been taught very good leadership skills, and you can have an incredibly 45, 50-year-old leader that's incredibly immature. And you know, I guarantee you, we've all seen that. Many of us have worked in those situations, and you know, it's great to work for mature leaders. That's all I'm going to say. So how about some lessons learned? Jack Welch. If you don't know Jack, who Jack is, Jack was one of the first and most successful CEOs in America to create leadership training, formal leadership training programs. But Jack, as we discussed in our leadership maturity framework, had to grow, just like Nelson Mandela, just like Gandhi had to grow, right? And when Jack was young, Jack used negative powers. Matter of fact, Jack, how he first got promoted was he was the foremost expert in his area at General Electric. And so he got promoted to vice president. But the problem was Jack was incredibly ambitious and he was super duper arrogant. And what happened is you put expert power with arrogance. Remember, experts it's just neutral, but you mix it with arrogance and ambition, and you get rejection and even rebellion. And why is this important? Because remember, great leaders develop voluntary followers. Great leaders develop voluntary followers. Followers that want to follow a leader will work harder, longer, be more loyal, and be more effective in reaching corporate and personal goals than anyone who is forced or just follows because they are compliant. So if you take a look at coercive type leader, coercion in anything equals compliance. I've been there before. I'm sure many people have been there before. I've worked for these type of managers. They're really not leaders, but managers before. And bottom line is that everybody on the team did just enough that what they needed to do to keep their jobs. And the high performers were actually persecuted, and sometimes I want to say pointed out as something negative or made fun of, because maybe that high performer was interested in hitting all their bonuses, so they got paid really, really well, but the rest of the team was upset at them because they were supporting a leader that they knew, or making a leader that looked, making a leader who shouldn't be looking good look good. And this happens all the time in corporate America, unfortunately. Just out of self-preservation, people will go beyond compliance to perform well because they want their own bonuses, and it has nothing to do with the manager that they work for. And then fear plus anything usually equals burnout. Those Machiavellian leaders that are fear-based, if you don't do this, if you don't do that, there's some horrible punishment, or you're going to get written up, or whatever that might be. They might have short-term success, and many of them do have short-term success, but that success rarely lasts longer than 2 to 3 years. And unfortunately, I see these people get promoted, and then what happens is the next person comes in and they literally take over a broken team. And Jack was experiencing a lot of these types of responses to his leadership when he was in the earlier levels of the leadership maturity framework. Now, as Jack got a little bit older and more comfortable in the leadership roles, he began to learn different ways to lead. Jack began to use positive leadership power. Jack began to understand how to influence people. Through influence power, you can build coalitions. So Jack had the daunting task of turning one of the world's largest corporations from the face of disaster to success. And he did, and this is how he did it. Jack actually made GE by the end of 2000 one of the world's strongest corporations globally in the global market. And one of the things he did, he built coalition, and he also built consensus through referential power with the labor side of the house, with union leaders, as well with the corporate leaderships. And he was able to put together deals between those two groups. And union leaders 100% believed that he was loyal to them. And within the corporate America, or the corporate leadership, he had a reputation for being able to get things done. So he was given the freedom to negotiate the contracts. And he turned the entire manufacturing, especially of small products, around to where GE began to produce more with product with fewer defects. And he adopted what's called continuous improvement process improvement, or a Six Sigma methodology. And they used that throughout GE to improve the entire organization. Then as Jack began to get promoted and run larger divisions, he learned the skill of persuasion. Matter of fact, the first time Jack was put up to be a CEO, he was rejected. There were some board members that he just could not persuade to allow him, or to for them to adopt the programs that he had put in his own areas. And some of that was left over from when he used negative power. They remembered that. And it wasn't until 2 or 3 key board members retired that Jack was actually put in as CEO at GE. And then once he was in, now he had the daunting task of trying to convince and persuade the people that he was in competition with for CEO, and all of the different competing divisions of GE to join together behind him. And what he did is he used reward power for that. So he created a system of reward for each individual divisions becoming an innovative, creative model. And if you think about GE, if you go and look up their branding, it is GE inspires, GE creates, GE is an innovative company. And if you look at the innovations that they came up with for about 15 years, they transformed the entire locomotive industry for trains. They are the reason why green diesel actually exists. You know, their fingers go so deep into global manufacturing. A lot of what they do, most people aren't even aware of. And Jack did this through a reward power. And now, one of the things that did happen is Jack began to get a little older, and in the program that he put together for leadership. Have you ever heard of the A team, the B team, the C team? Right? You know, when you're on the A team, you know things are great. When you're on the B team, you know you have an opportunity to get on the A team because they put a plan for you together. If you're on the C team, you know that you're never going to get promoted. And what happened was all the C players got very demotivated, and they left and went to other companies. Matter of fact, a lot of B players migrated to other corporations where they could take a little higher position because GE was so well known for producing great leaders. And this put a little hitch in his giddy up. And GE, after Jack retired, did have to conquer that. And they began to practice some of the things that we're going to talk about. What happens post success. So before we go there, though, we're going to discuss a little bit about power and the generations. All right. So this is the post Jack Welch world, right? And in a minute, you're going to see why some of the things that Jack did, although they were absolutely spectacular, we need to know about, and we need to understand that most boomers, traditionalists, and a lot of Gen Xers all understand Jack Welch leadership style. That's their mindset. And you're going to see this in a minute. But millennials and Zoomers are not. And that Jack Welch style, Lee Iacocca, all that generation from 1980 to 2000, although they were great leaders for the society that we lived in at that time, that style doesn't necessarily work all the time now. Now, so what drives the younger generations? Leadership competence. Now, what's interesting, if you take a look at the Blake Mouton managerial grid, the most successful and the most long-term success leadership are leaders, which they categorize as competent leaders, are all team builders. That means to be a competent leader, you care as much about teamwork and the people that are on the teams as you do with productivity. And so if you have 100% care for your team and your team members and 100% care for the corporate goals, you get a touchdown, right? Touchdown, right? However, if you love your team members and you have no care for your to complete your goals, you get a foul. Isn't that a foul, right? Somewhere that's a foul. I know that. I know somewhere in sports that's a foul, flag or throw a flag. And what's also interesting is, and also vice versa. You know, if you don't care about your teams, all you do is care about productivity, right? That'd be negative. That negative leader. You can't be all just gushy and mooey and gooey. You know, there are business goals, and you can't just be numbers oriented and stern and hard. When you have a mix and you're equal in both, you literally score the best. It's how you create high performing teams and high performing organizations. The other thing is that they love servant-based leadership. Servant-based leadership wasn't even a theory until the 1970s and wasn't really even taught in universities until after 2000, when after 30 years of proving how well it worked, right? But this is a servant-based leadership or transformational leadership, or I want to just lump all the modern styles of leadership, fluid leadership, congruent leadership, divergent leadership, convergent leadership. These are all newer leadership ideals that are out there. But again, what's interesting is every single one of those has horizontals that make them work. So we talk about generations, right? And millennial and Zoomers, they are team oriented. They want to collaborate. Which powers create team? Which powers create collaboration? They want to be mentored. They want to be coached. Growing up, this is how they lived. If they didn't get something right, they were coached until they did, if they had the aptitude. They want to feel respected and have mutual respect. Matter of fact, as a leader, if you don't show respect for their ideas and for them as a person, they won't even give you the time of day. They could care less what you say or who you are. This is the old adage. No one really cares what you have to say until they know you care about them. And they're purpose driven. What set of leadership powers encompass how millennials and Zoomers are driven and motivated? Positive ones do. Positive ones. Of course, the neutral ones, if you mix a neutral with the positive, that's what we're looking for, right? Now, what about the older generations? When you look at Gen X and Boomers, right, their driving factors are really personal competency. It's all about them. They're goal oriented. They like goal oriented leadership. This is the Jack Welch era. That's why we discussed Jack. And the message to Gen Xers and Boomers here is even Jack grew. You know, and those leadership styles are now 20 plus years old, and they were perfect for the generations in which we grew up in. I'm a Gen Xer. But for the millennials and Zoomers, they think different. And if you're a millennial or a Zoomer, you got to understand that Gen Xers, Boomers, and traditionalists, they think different, right? But what types of power motivate Gen X and Boomers? They like promotion and money, reward. They like to be recognized, right, Cynthia?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, I told you. They like loyalty, and they value personal development. And so even though they're a little bit more inward focused and me focused as generations, they still are motivated by positive leadership powers. So if you were in the Jack Welch era and you were a negative leader, you still weren't getting things done like you needed to. It's the same thing today. If you are in the modern era, regardless of the leadership style you use, you're going to give yourself a better chance of succeeding if you're using positive leadership power. Then, while you learn the positive leadership power and you learn that how to become a more mature leader, you can study the newer styles of leadership like transformational leadership, fluid leadership, divergent, convergent type of leadership styles that are proving to be the most effective in the workplace. And then you get the trifecta. You know, you're using the right type of powers. You are using more modern leadership styles, and you're on one of the more mature levels of leadership. And that's what we're going for. And that's what we're going to need coming out of this COVID situation that we're in. And there's a term that we use, and it's called a VUCA world: a volatile, unpredictable, complex, and many times ambiguous, like, what the heck am I going to do now? That's ambiguous world. And that's what we're in. And these three legs to the stool are what's going to help leaders emerge and create strong organizations. So I want to take just a minute and talk about power and performance, because Cynthia, this one again is kind of for you. Right on the thing.
Yes.
So what discourages high performance and high performers? Matter of fact, these are actually, according to Forbes and Harvard Business School, these are the 6 top reasons why high performers leave an organization. They're tired of picking up extra work that others aren't getting done. Then they feel like the work is just not a challenge anymore. Their creativity is stifled. They're not given enough freedom to create programs or run with an idea that they have that they think will work. There's no opportunities for advancement or to develop themselves. Unfair compensation, and normally this is something other than money. Flexibility to work at home. How many high performing millennials are like, dude, I don't need to come into the office. I want to go work from 8 to 12, do my thing in the afternoon, and then go out. I tell you, one of the groups that I managed in California, this is when I had a national role, you could not keep the San Diego people in the office. Why? They're all surfers. They're all surfers. Man, they were so scattered, it was unbelievable. But when the waves were good, they were not working. It didn't matter what time of day. It didn't matter what management meeting was planned. And so many leaders got frustrated with them. But they were producing, some of the people in the office were making $400,000 or $500,000 a year in sales. I'm telling you, they were killers, right? But they wanted to work when they wanted to work. And you know what was insane is that a friend of mine took over as the marketplace vice president for California, and we worked together. I was managing them from here in St. Pete. He managed them and then turned 3 out of the 4 offices in California to high producers like that. And you know what happened? Somebody from way up high in the corporation came in and said, we don't like the fact that they're not working regular 8 to 5 hours. And they fired the vice president. And, they basically told everybody, I didn't know what I was talking about. And guess what happened? Yeah, the offices started to fail. And 4 years later, 2 out of the 4 offices, they had to close because they were performing so poorly. Lesson learned, right? Because when all of this is going on, people feel unappreciated. And people that feel unappreciated are looking for a new job. They're looking for a new home. Now, how about the opposite of that? Let's talk about some positive, good stuff, right? What inspires high performance people? Coaching. They love to be coached. This is, think of your favorite baseball player or tennis player or whoever it might be, right? It's not going well. They go right to their coach. Coach, what am I doing wrong? What is it? Am I not keeping my eye on the ball? What's going on with my backstroke? They love to be coached, right? They want to have their strengths built on. They don't want to be treated like a bum and told how bad they are and that everything they do sucks or have all the negatives pointed out. They want to build on the strengths. They want you to start out with something positive and build on that. And then while you're building on the strengths, you're like, hey, by the way, you should be working on this because that part of your swing is weak. But you got to put it in a positive way, a positive tone. This is part of positive questioning techniques. We're not going to cover it, but when we do paid training, I literally do teach it's called appreciative inquiry. And it's actually leadership skill, a specific leadership skill that teaches how to form questions and how to coach people with positive questions. And what's amazing is I've practiced this and I've done it live. So people have actually seen it on Facebook Live or in one of our meetings where there's a particular person who used to join ours all the time. And I would always come up with these positive questions. And in 2 subsequent meetings, the person just automatically goes, but I'm really weak here. And I recognize that. Matter of fact, I just did that. And I made a comment I shouldn't have made about somebody else's comment. And automatically, they themselves did a little self-discovery and admitted their weakness without me having to tell them. That's how powerful appreciative inquiry is. It literally allows and creates an environment where people feel safe to say, you know what, I'm not perfect. And that's okay. And it allows some of those hard to talk about areas when you're coaching, they surface them themselves without you having to bring them up. And then you can intervene. So that's also promote self-discovery. And then the whole process keeps your mind and emotions upbeat. And of course, that makes you feel appreciated. What do people who feel appreciated do? Not only do they stay, but they tend to perform better than those that don't. So as you all know, it's my little ad. If you haven't had a chance to grab my book, please do. It was and has been selling. I've actually had a lot of people that have read the book once and then decided to read a second time. One of the people that I was talking about that I coached with the positive stuff, he's a traditionalist. Read it more than once because he learned so much about the younger generations. But that really is everything that I had to cover. So what I wanted to do is open it up like we normally do. So I'm going to stop my share for just questions, comments. Is it kind of pulling together a little bit the importance of the 3 sessions that we've talked about? Megan, you've been kind of quiet. Anna Marie?
Yep, I'll go first.
Oh.
So I want to say thank you. This is actually my first session. So I know it was part 3, but I had just heard about it and I figured, well, better late than never. So let me jump in and see what it's all about. So thank you. It was actually very interesting. I have been a supervisor for a little over 8 years, but just for a couple of staff. I have been a leader my whole life. I'm the oldest of 6. So, but I will say I was recently promoted, and so my responsibilities have grown a lot in the management leader style. And so I was just looking for new tools, and I have found it very interesting. So I can't really speak to the other 2 parts. But being a newcomer, I can say that I was able to pick up on the messaging that you're talking about and the differences between the positive sources and the neutral sources. And yeah, I think anybody who's been in the work industry for a while can recognize those negative sources pretty easily. But yes, I fully believe that encouragement and leaving people with a sense of hope and I don't know, just excitement and ambition is definitely the key characteristic of a good leader.
Thanks. And hopefully I'll be posting the first 2 on the YouTube channel. I've got to talk to Cynthia to make sure that's okay, and you can watch them there. But something that came up while you were talking that I think would be really important for you is something called, especially having been in management for a long time, is what are called autopoietic systems, and being promoted to a higher position. And an autopoietic system, it's a big word, but all it means is what I call it, it's leadership for growth or automated growth. And it's a way that leaders put things into practice. And once you start the process, it's like an engine that just perpetual engine. Once it starts running, and we have a friend, a mutual friend, Cynthia and I, who has done this in the mortgage industry. And I compliment him all the time because I was getting my PhD. I was like, I would tell him, you've just done this. You're doing what I'm studying. And it has turned out incredibly well for him. He has thousands and thousands of followers. I think one of his last podcasts, he had over 60,000 people attend. And so he's done very well. but it is a process that I've practiced as well in leadership. And when I was in leadership, my peers were spending 50, 60 hours a week, sometimes more, traveling Monday through Friday. And I was working about, after I got my processes rolling, I was working 25 to 32 hours a week and outperforming them, and only traveling 3 weeks out of the month, Tuesday through Thursday. And so it is quite life transforming when you learn the processes and how to create what's called an autopoietic system in leadership. And I cover a little bit in the book, in the very last chapter. But if you want to email me, I'd love to have a conversation with you about it, because it's incredibly powerful process.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anna Marie, anybody else? Anyone to add to the conversation?
What I see, what you're talking about regarding the Gen Xers and the boomers and zoomers, and our office, particular office, is a small office, and we have a mix, a couple, say one boomer, a couple Gen Xers, and then millennials, and maybe even a zoomer. And so it's interesting to see the different work styles and how they work. And when you hear like, why are they doing that? Or I understand why they do this. And it's because a lot of times it's a generational gap, and you don't understand how someone is working because they want to do it this way because that's just how they work best, right? So trying to be, and I'm not the manager, but I sympathize with the manager, in those situations, trying to manage not just the different personalities, but the generations, right? So I imagine it can be quite challenging because it's not just one style doesn't fit all, but certainly some good stuff in terms of the positive versus the negative power sources.
Yeah, and again, for people that have tried different leadership styles or theories that haven't had success, it's very likely that they're simply on a lower level of leadership, or earlier level of leadership maturity, and using negative leadership power, and they might not even know it. They may have no idea that they're coming across negative, or not connecting, because they don't understand some of the simple basics of communication. And that's what I find. I don't, there's very few people that really want to be bad. There just really are very few people. The vast majority of people want to do good, but a large percentage of people get frustrated and they become disengaged. Matter of fact, disengaged workers are costing, before COVID, upwards of $550 billion a year in corporate America. And I actually wanted to pull out these statistics. I wasn't sure if it would come up, but the scary thing, this is before COVID, the best corporations in the world, as a measure of management, have about 70 to 75% of their employees fully engaged. The worst is just the opposite. And the scary thing is the United States is on the lower side towards the worst side. And people just frustrated. And part of it, I 100% believe, is that focus of inward, me focused, narcissistic focus, versus outward focus, which is others focused. And as Lori said, you do have to be intrinsic. You have to look inside yourself and think, how can I make sure there's a more brilliant version of me tomorrow? And if we're doing that, then things will continue to get better. And in Anna Marie, we played a video in our last meeting, and it's on a Marshmallow Challenge, like Marshmallow Tower building challenge. That's from a TED Talk. And one of the things that became evident is that our bachelor degree programs graduate people from college based on becoming an expert or a more me inward focused level of maturity and leadership. And 47% of all leaders in corporate America are at the higher of the inward focused leadership levels, which is expert. But the expert's still all about me. I'm the expert. Look at me. As opposed to moving beyond that, which is what's called the achiever level, which says, look at the team. Let's build a team.
Absolutely. I can understand that. And I really appreciate Lori's earlier comment about, you know, what makes a good leader and having that introspective. Yes, the team is very important. And I consider myself blessed to have been hired right out of college where I am now. And I've been here 14 years and I've followed on the coattails of some really awesome leaders and supervisors that have really provided a good foundation for me to grow from. And for me personally, that introspective part is going to be an interesting ride, you know, because I can follow by their example, you know, but when it comes to actually looking inwards and kind of seeing how can I make myself better, or what are my staff going to say about me, as you promote and you have more people, that 360 review is going to be fun. So looking forward to it. But absolutely, it's a good point that you make on what students come into, and then even as they grow through the ranks, you know, that 360 review is for me, relatively new concept. It isn't something that I had previously participated in. So some conversations are having here that we might go that route, and I think that's a positive thing. I think
360 reviews are something that I absolutely recommend and am behind. I think they're terrific because you get, as long as they're anonymous, and I think that's super important. And one thing that I would ask when those happen, and I would bring up with your organization, that when they say they are anonymous, is the leader going to see the personal comments that are made on the short answer review? Because I was involved in a situation once where a regional vice president got a 360-degree review, and his team was told that it was going to be anonymous. And so comments were made in the short answer part where you could clearly tell who made them, and it wasn't anonymous, and it caused a real bad riff and a very uncomfortable 12 months, and one director actually finally leaving.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I know we're just having discussions now of kind of changing our performance review process. So that was one of the things that was in the survey. You know, if you would consider doing this 360, what kind of things do you think about? What are concerns that you have? And certainly you could see those anonymity comments being there. And that is important. I think in order for people to be truthful, they should be able to remain anonymous.
Yeah. I agree. So, you know, just you know, if in that negotiation process with your company, I would definitely bring that up, or the decision-making process, because it can be very damaging when people do get access to those comments, as opposed to, you know, just the ratings. You know, I mean, of course you're going to get the ratings because you want to see how you're ranked. I mean, that's part of the 360. But the personal comments are very clear who they come from. You know. Anyway.
Thank you, sir. I am going to log off. It's been fun, Cynthia. Always a pleasure to see you.
Yes.
It's been a
Good
while.
to see you.
Right, I know.
It is 8:30. You know, we were only scheduled to really go to about 8:10, but
Yes. All right. Well, have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.
bye, Anna Marie.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, my grandkids are knocking at my door here. So,
All right.
all right. Well, it's a pleasure as always.
Yes.
Have a good night.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.